Welcome to our new Insights and Recommendations feature. This feature is going to allow you to reach new levels of personalization in your programming with your athletes, and I want to walk you through it here today. This is only going to be available for a select number of tests, which will indicate in the software, but we'll list a few of them for you here as well. When you land on the test summary screen after performing a test, first thing you'll want to do is select the Insights tab. After you select the Insights tab, the first thing you'll want to do is make sure that your filters are set correctly for the athlete that you're working with. So in my case, it'll automatically default to your gender and age group. In this case, it's going to default for this person's gender, which is male, and it's going to select their default to their age group of 20 to 30 years old. After you get those filters set, which you can adjust by selecting the filter area or selecting the filter selector, going through and selecting it to whatever you want, you'll then go into the Insights fan graphic. So this is going to be the main graphic that you're going to get that kind of high level overview of where your athlete sits along the force velocity spectrum for each movement category. So you'll see that for every movement category that you performed, the movement category will be classified into one of four buckets: either low strength, speed dominant, strength dominant, or high strength and speed. If a movement category is classified as low strength, what that means is that the athlete was below the 50th percentile in their power output. And so they're automatically going to be recommended to perform high force, low velocity movements. And so that's why they're going to be classified as low strength. And I'll show you down later in the feature what exercises we will then recommend based on that categorization. If an athlete is above the 50th percentile, but their acceleration score is greater than 5 percentile points higher than their power score, then they're going to be listed as speed dominant or classified as speed dominant for that movement category. And they'll be in this kind of orange-yellow kind of section here. And then lastly, the next category here is strength dominant. If their power score is greater than 5 percentile points higher than their acceleration, then that movement category will be placed into the strength dominant category. And then lastly, if that category or if that score is within 5 percentile points of each other for power and acceleration, they'll be put into the category of high strength and speed. If you then want to get more details about how their power and acceleration compare to each other, you go down to the dials. So after looking at the fan chart, you can see obviously very quickly where each movement category lands within those classifications. And then you have, in a general sense of where they stand along the force velocity spectrum, the idea is to move the athlete to the right into the green as much as possible. You want to see as many things over in the green section as you can. But if you want to see a little bit more detail before, scrolling down and getting to the nitty-gritty detail, you can look at the dials to see exactly how their power and acceleration compare for each movement category. So for instance, if we look in this test, we look at core rotation as one of the movements classified as low strength. We can go down to the core rotation movement category here, and we can see how their power and acceleration compare. The outer ring is going to be your power, and the inner ring is going to be your acceleration percentile ranking. So you'll see that for this individual, the athlete scored in the 39th percentile for power and the 39th percentile for acceleration. So because that power is below the 50th percentile, they automatically got put in the low strength category and need to work on increasing strength with high force, low velocity movements. But if we move over to, say, the speed dominant category, we can see that this particular individual landed in the upper body horizontal push category in speed dominant. And so you'll see that the power percentile ranking was the 54th percentile, where acceleration was the 65th. So because the acceleration was greater than 5 percentile points higher than the power, they got put into speed dominant. And then therefore they need to work on increasing their power output by working on moderate force and moderate velocity exercises. So that's where they're going to land here. And you can continue to look through these dials and see, how that power and acceleration compare to each other. But you'll notice that anyone that's put in the speed dominant will always have acceleration, so that inner ring be higher than the outer ring. whereas anyone put into strength dominant will always have the outer ring being higher than the inner ring. And then obviously the last group is this kind of balanced group of high strength and speed, and that's where they're within those 5 percentile points of each other. You'll see that those bars will be roughly even. But what you really want to focus on here is by looking at both of these graphics together, you want to move as many categories as you can over into the high strength and speed, and then you want to fill those dials, right? You want the athlete to get these dials to move further and further up until the whole dial is filled, because that means they're scoring higher and higher and their percentile ranking for power and acceleration for that movement category. So that's a quick overview of the top of this page. But if you want to see what specific recommendations that you need for your athlete for each movement category, you can scroll down and then you'll see that every movement category is classified into each bucket down below. So here are all your low strength movement categories. So just like above, we have elbow extension, elbow flexion, and core rotation, right? We can now even scroll down further, see the movement categories classified as speed dominant, strength dominant, and high strength and speed. But what we'll want to do is first, let's just pay attention to that core rotation again. So because core rotation was categorized as low strength, we can go into core rotation and see exactly what those numbers are. If you recall, it was 39th percentile for each power and acceleration. But then next to that, you can see the recommendation of the types of exercises we would recommend that are along the high force, low velocity side of the spectrum on the force velocity curve. And so in this case, it's going to recommend seated trunk rotations, anti-rotation presses, and wide grip straight arm cable trunk rotations as the types of exercises you want to work on to improve that rotational core foundational strength. And you can do the same thing by looking at elbow extension exercises, elbow flexion exercises, and they'll all be kind of in that high force, low velocity category of the type of exercises selected. But then obviously if you go down to speed dominant, strength dominant, the exercises will scale to be more along the force velocity spectrum that is required to improve that particular movement category. So if we go into kind of strength dominant, obviously these individuals, to improve their performance, need to improve their speed. So they're going to be recommended to train high velocity, low force exercises. So if you look at the type of exercises in the lateral, lower body lateral push, you'll see that we have exercises that fall into that category. So it's lateral bounds, shuffles, and lateral slide boards. These are all exercises you can do with high acceleration and high speed, but have low resistance. So that's a quick overview of kind of the recommended exercises based on the movement category. But there's a couple other things that you can do in this section that will provide a lot of interesting information. So for one thing, if you do an exercise on the left and the right, and there's a big imbalance between the two, we're going to call that out by flagging that movement category to have an imbalance. So you'll see that in that little red indicator there. And you could always expand these cards to get a little bit more detail. So if I tap on that button to expand it, you'll see that not only do I get the history of my power and my acceleration, but I also get that indicator of that left to right imbalance, and I can actually see which side is stronger, the left or the right side, so that I can know which side I need to work on more. And you'll probably want to do exercises, a greater volume of exercises on that weaker side, or just in general, pay attention to that imbalance as you're going through your training. In addition, what's not shown here, but you may also see is a flag for a low elasticity. So low elasticity is a score that we give if you perform a counter movement version of an exercise and you compare that to a static start movement of exercise. So let's think about a vertical jump. If you were to do a vertical jump and you start with a static start, so you go into a squat, pause, then jump, and you compare that to a regular counter movement jump where you preload before jumping up, your counter movement jump should have about 10 to 15% more power. And if it doesn't, then we're gonna flag that, just like we're seeing this flag here, as a low elasticity score. And we will then recommend plyometric exercises for you to perform to improve that power output. So last thing to note is that we are coming out with a mobile version of this entire screen that you can share with your athletes. It won't be quite ready at launch, but it'll come soon after launch. And essentially what you'll be able to do is tap on that share button and send it directly to your athletes via email. And it'll just be a much more condensed version of this. It'll have all the same information, including what exercises the athlete should be working on, so they can access it from their phone without having to go into the software, log in, all that kind of thing. So it's gonna be a really easy way to share this information. So that's it. That's our insights and recommendations feature. We're so excited to release it, and we can't wait to see how you use it.